Hi, I'm Todd Stewart, and today I'm going to show you why it's so crucial to package your sculptures correctly and how we do it here. Well, the reason why it's such an issue to package your sculpture correctly before you send it off is because it's one of the very few processes that is at arm's length, and we're really reliant on the good reputation of the freight companies that we use. So what I traditionally do is I pack for the worst. I package for the worst, meaning that potentially it could fall off the back of a truck, and you need to know that your packaging is going to survive a blow of that sort of kind. The other reason why it's really crucial is because if any of our sculptures were to get damaged, the finishes we use, they're all very highly specialised, and we have very specialised artisans that help us get them to that level of finish. So imagine we sent a sculpture to an international destination, and then when it arrives, there's damage to the surface. It would be just about impossible for me to find an artisan in the town or the home city of the client to rectify any problems. So it would mean expense sending it back to us. It would mean time lost where maybe it was somebody's birthday potentially as a present. In bigger jobs it might be that there's a deadline for a project to be opened and ready. We have never had any recourse on anything we've packaged and sent. We always advise clients, if they're really worried about the security of the works and any loss, that obviously insurance is another option that can be taken. But the resultant benefit of getting your packaging right is that when a client receives a package, there's no letdown for the client. They're waiting for it in anticipation. If you can imagine the opposite of receiving something that was damaged, a client is opening up the box, they're pulling the sculpture out, and to find something damaged, it feels like a total letdown. It's a total disengagement of the work, and that'd be very disappointing for the client. Whereas by us packaging right, we're really reassuring that the client has the best process, the best journey, so to speak, of receiving a sculpture right to the end. Here we stick to a 4-step process to make it very simple. The first step is to make sure all works are free and clean of any dirt, because dirt can potentially be an abrasive. And if you imagine any dirt which is packaged up with a sculpture and being transported, any sort of slight movement, that dirt could affect the finishes of the sculpture. So the second step is to clad and mummify the sculpture using high impact foams and high absorbent bubble wraps, and then sealing that onto the sculpture. To compress it onto the sculpture, we use a special flexible film that helps us compress both the foam and the bubble wrap onto the sculpture, which makes a nice thick protective layer which becomes very high impact. Third step is to prepare or select a suitable boxing arrangement to be able to suspend the sculpture within, so that there's enough room to put extra fill around the sculpture to basically suspend that sculpture in the middle of that box, so that if the box does have an impact like falling off the back of a truck, there's plenty of room for the sculpture to move before it hits the sides of the box and potentially could cause damage. So just gives that bit of room for the sculpture to move if it really needs to, and any sort of impact. Fourth step is to securely tape up the box or secure the box, and put any official markings on there, the address details of the client, where it's going, and also any sort of fragile signage. So at least it makes the courier company aware that when they're picking up this box, they really need to pay attention to it. It doesn't mean that I have control of them picking it up any sort of way. So it's at least to give them the heads up that be aware, pay attention, please look after this package.
Every sculpture really does require sort of a design process to understand what the best way of having mastery to pack it would be to ensure that there's no damage. So as you can see in this example, I'm sending some goods off to Saudi Arabia, which was an air freighted example. The boxing had to be solid ply box with a lot of fill to make sure that the separately wrapped items were not going to get damaged. In this example here, a couple of monumental sculptures that went across to Muscat, and they had to be programmed and planned into an open top container, so sculptures couldn't be slid in from the end of the container because there would have been more possibility to find damage putting the sculptures into the container from one end. So I made an order for a sea container that could open from the top, and we could crane the sculptures in from the top and then support them by the most minimal supports in the container, so the sculptures weren't touching anything that could possibly hit or damage the sculptures.
We also ship monumental sized sculptures that are larger than the size of a standard size container, and these sculptures need to be supported and held within a custom frame that we design so it can safely sit without getting damaged in the open hull of the freighting ship.
So really the process is something of designing around what's needed, and so if it's a smaller sculpture, there's one process. If there's bigger sculptures, another process. And so it does also depend on on the method of sending the sculptures. So if you think this aspect of packaging in the right way is really important, and you do engage a sculptor or you do have an art gallery send you some work, really get them to pay attention to the packing. Even if they haven't mentioned it, I think it's really important that you mention it to them.
If a sculpture is received in a way that is undamaged, then it's got every chance of being a legacy after that. You can also check out other testimonies from really happy clients of how they felt when they received their sculpture legacy. You can check out a testimony page by clicking here.